Right, well, as you can see, my name's Paul Wright, and I teach in two primary schools in Kingston upon Hull, just north of the Humber, and I teach computing in both of those schools. And what we're going to do today is have a look at the sort of hybrid blended learning that really kicked off when one of our first of many lockdowns, and just how one of the schools that I work at has used J2E in that context. So what we'll do is we'll try and keep it around about 15 minutes, show you how I personally used J2 homework, and then how some of the other teachers used the shared files. And I'll just chip in with some background as we go along. Okay, so if you haven't seen J2 homework, then you'll find that green tile somewhere on your launch page, and that will be how you access it. Now, we won't have an in-depth look at it today because we'll just run out of time, but there is a webinar here, so I'll just, so if you go to just2easy.com and then news, you'll see the Quick Bites logo, and there is one on J2 homework. So I'll just dip in and out quickly to give you a feel for it. This was done by Nikki, who is currently on maternity leave, and partly why I'm doing this webinar.
The assumption that you know how to log in, show us more information about that.
So she will take you step by step on setting homework tasks using J2 homework, and what you need to do with the shared files, and then how pupils will access it and how they will submit their work back. Okay, so I will leave that. That will be on that website for you to have a look at any time you choose. So let's just have a look now pardon me, at J2 homework. So I'll quickly dip in, but I say it won't be an in-depth one. So this is a task that I set many lockdowns ago. I've just changed the dates on it to make it easier to find. So when children log into J2 homework, they'll see something like this, and we as a teacher can put whatever we like in here, words, links to other activities. Okay, we can assign a start date and a due date. Okay, so we can give them as much time as we like to do that one, and then when that work has been completed, you can see, you can click down here and you can see which users have sent the work back. So you can edit it at any time. And you can see here, you can assign it. So on this one, I've assigned to the year 2. So this is what it would look like as you as a teacher. Now, in the lockdowns, I was working exclusively from home. So because I was doing basically setting one task per week for each year group, J2 homework worked for me. So that was absolutely fine. We'll have a look at how some of the other teachers use that in a few minutes. So that was fine for me. It worked there, and you can assign homework. If I wanted to, I could have recorded some verbal instructions down here. So let me just click there. So we can see here that, you know, that's what it looks like. And, oh, pardon me. So if I go to homework, that is the file that I made and then shared with the year groups, and it was a sequencing exercise in coding, and they had to drag those blocks around and make the lighthouse flash. So what happened then is when a child submitted it, and here's an example of one that's been done, you can see here that they've successfully coded it so the lighthouse flashes, and that's the job done there. So that is using how I used J2 homework. We just take a look down at this little bit here to show you what kind of went on in the background of that. Was these were the tasks that were set as homework tasks. So here's a toy sorting activity to go with the Victorians topic. You can see here that I shared it with those classes. And occasionally I would drop in something like this. Now, this wasn't a homework task. It was just a reminder of the tools. And I have to say it was partly there for the pupils, but equally as much for the parents. So that was for the parents to be able to access and just know what the software was doing and give them a hand and reminder with their pupils. So all this work was shared with individual classes. And then some of it was set as a J2 homework task. So let me just that one. So we can just see here, if I click on here, show expired, you can see all the homework tasks that were done that I set during the various lockdowns. We'll have a quick look at one here. Just a file I made where the pupils had to code the girl to visit a few points of local interest. Okay, so that was the J2 homework. What some of the other teachers did, because they had to, they basically did 3 core lessons. They did a maths lesson, a reading lesson, and a literacy lesson, and they used live lessons. So they used the video conferencing part of Google to do their live teaching. So if I just come to have a look down here at how perhaps year 2 started using it. Shared files, let's go to 2M now. So here is a folder that Lucy, the then teacher in year 2, created. So she started off in week 1 using this approach, where the files were just parked in and saved, and the children just access those. So they were in there, so the children would just come along, click on the file, and do whatever instructions that were set for them. Okay, and sometimes it was more instructional, and sometimes it was an activity to complete. And then up here, if you're not familiar with these, on every piece of work that you put into J2E that's uploaded to my files, there is what's called a learning conversation. And so you can see here the conversation. Sometimes this was children, sometimes it was parents. So if they got stuck, they can't type the answers. There we go. But you can also use that learning conversation to make comments about pupils' work. So we'll bump into one of those later on. I'll just show you how it works in practice. So that was the first week of week 1s. And then by the time Lucy had got into week 4, she'd arranged her file slightly differently, insofar that she had decided to go on a day-by-day basis. It doesn't necessarily mean that one method is better than the other. That's just how she chose to work it. I think she found that it was perhaps more organized that way. And again, it's just click on the file and read it and have a look at it and act accordingly. So that was just a couple of ways of doing it. As I say, week 1 was everything going in the one folder. And by the time she got to week 4, she changed slightly and had it there. And then towards the end of the term, we had this pin challenge where the children had to do various tasks in order to earn the right to wear a nice little badge. Same sort of principle, just gone down. So it's very easy. You know, you can just make those files, and you can see here it's been shared out with her class. Okay, there is another webinar on how to share those. Okay, so that's just a couple of methods. So my approach, because I didn't have to do live learning, I used J2 homework, whereas because Lucy and the other teachers were doing live lessons, they were able to say to them during that live lesson, right, today's work is in week 4 and it's in the Monday folder. So, you know, they didn't need or didn't choose to use J2 homework. Now, as well, that's the teachers, you know, that's the teacher going to the pupils. Right? The pupils, if I just click on this, I'm just going to go and only select the pictures just to cut down on the clutter. So one of the tasks that they had to do was a D&T activity where they had to design a tent or a shelter. And here you can see that the pupils have taken pictures and uploaded it back into their My Files area. So they've got a little record there of their D&T activity. And here, I think it was a baking activity. There you go. So that was a really good example of how it wasn't just using the worksheets. Parents and pupils were able to take photographs and upload those back. And occasionally you can see here, they could take photographs of their design before they started building. So the whole project is kind of captured there. And the learning conversations here, here's an example. Okay, just a little. They were added quite recently, but you can just type in here. So let's have a look and see if there's another one we can have a quick look at with just words in. There we go. Short example of what Kathy would like that child to do with that one. So there we are. There is that's the pupils coming back approach. And if we just look here, this is an example of a year 5 teacher.
If I want to divide 54 by 2, I'm going to see how many 2s are in 5. I know 2 times 2 is 4.
I don't think we need to watch the rest of that, but the idea then was that obviously teachers could upload support materials to support the learning while those children were at home. And increasingly, they're doing that so that activities and resources like that are available. Even though the children in school, you know, it's very handy to be able to have something that, like a video like that to refer back to. So that's just like the little journey of where we started at one of the schools at. It kind of was forced upon us by circumstances called COVID. But then we've kind of changed and developed over time. And now some of the things that we did because we had to, we're now doing because they work. For example, that teacher uploaded video is now becoming a kind of standard practice. So I've just looked down at the clock. We're just about on time there. This webinar will be published to this web address. If I just click on it and let you follow. There it is. There is the Quick Bites logo. So if you just click on that, you'll be taken through to all the other Quick Bites that have been done. And there's the J2 homework one that I highlighted earlier on. This one will be published to here. So you'll be able to go back to it or signpost your colleagues to it. Okay, so Alistair, have there been any questions either on the chat or would anybody like to ask a question now?
Thanks, Paul. Really good to your experience with working with children and teachers and staff whilst during lockdown. That's absolutely fabulous. Everybody, you can see why they are called Quick Bites. We aim to ensure that you get as much information as possible out of us in a short, snappy 15 minutes. We appreciate Paul's gone through a great deal there for you. If you have any questions, feel free to either unmute yourself and ask away. If you can't unmute yourself, raise your hand by clicking on the reactions at the bottom of the screen, and then just raise your hand and I'll make sure that you get the opportunity to ask a question either in audio, or if you want to just pop your question on the chat, do feel free to just pop it in there and get typing away. Whilst we're doing that, oh, Paul's just stopped sharing his screen. Would you mind just sharing your screen back again, Paul?
No, not at all.
What I would like to say is that if you go to just2easy.com, go back up there again to the top of the page. There we go, just2easy.com. In the news section, you see that there's the tab at the top there. The news section will take you into the Quick Bites. And I can see that somebody on the chat did have a little problem with internet connection. Sorry about that. This video will be up there as soon as possible, probably tomorrow now. So that you can share that with colleagues. There'll be a specific link directly to that recording, and I'll share that with you as well. One of my questions that I'd like to ask, Paul, whilst people are going on, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for that question as well. One of my questions is, how would you relate now from what you've learned through lockdown to the point we're at now where children are either in the classroom, or some of the children are in bubbles, or some of the children are now, unfortunately, due to COVID restrictions, having to self-isolate again?
Yeah, well, we've done a couple of things. Sometimes I think we've used video conferencing, so then just like parked a laptop on a desk and pointed at the front of the screen so they can take part and kind of be in the lesson that way. As again, we've used the sharing facility so that you know, they've got access to the work, so the children that are in school will have access via shared files, and if they're at home they'll have access to exactly the same resources, so they're not missing out, you know. And that is, we find that the shared files is really powerful, because then you can put any work or, you know, videos or links that you want to put in there. And as I say, they're available not just for the children who are at home, but also for the children who might want to go back and revisit that video. I use it quite a lot with J2 Code. I've done quite a few little videos on J2 Code, and they are there in shared files, so that, you know, if I don't happen to be there, they now are in the habit of going to find those videos. So things that were forced upon us are now becoming, you know, a slightly different way of working.
Yeah, very true. Okay, well, thank you ever so much for that, Paul. It's important for everybody here to realize that, you know, sometimes you might just be using some of the tools in earnest and not realize that other tools are available to you inside the platform as well, which does make this a very comprehensive system for online learning, no matter what the subject, whether it's computing or geography or history, as Paul will constantly tell you as well. So, thank you, Paul. There aren't any further questions on here. I can see that people have found the links and will be able to get online and see all the different quick bites. Just a little nudge to everybody that's here. If you would like to, if you've not registered already, thank you for doing so for those of you that have. The next session we're running at the same time next week is a slightly different look at hybrid learning and online learning with us. We're going to be exploring more of those tools for interaction and ways to engage pupils in learning, either when they're working at home or in the classroom. And we're looking at the communication tools within J2E as well. So if you haven't already, do feel free to register for those sessions. Okay, right. Well, that brings us to the end of today's session. I'm going to just conclude this by saying thank you so much to Paul for running this session for us. Sorry about the technical difficulties in getting going in the first couple of minutes. Thank you for waiting, everybody. And I thank everybody here as well for joining in the session. If you have any other questions and you don't have time to ask those on the chat here today, do feel free to get hold of us either on the contact us page or pop us a tweet or something on Facebook as well. You can find us there, both of those. Great stuff. Well, positive messages from people on the chat. Thank you very much. And
thank you for turning up. And if it's not too late, it's the first one, so Happy New Year.
Very good. Take care, everybody.